Hi, my name is Sathvik Mutoopuri and this is my Physics 1 lab on constant velocity. First, let's talk about the introduction. This lab explores the concept of constant velocity and how well we could model this concept using an expo marker being rolled across a table. The accuracy of this model was validated using a computational model using GlowScript, which modeled the motion of this marker mathematically using Newton's second law. The main purpose of this lab was to compare the two models and see how close our observed motion was to constant velocity. From this comparison, we were able to elucidate that our model underpredicted the final position of the ball. Now let's discuss the key concepts used in this lab. Newton's second law states that the net force on a system is defined as the rate of change in momentum, otherwise the derivative of momentum. The derivative of momentum can be rearranged to give us the momentum update formula. The velocity update formula can then be derived by dividing the momentum update formula by the mass of the system. These formulas were used to build a computational model in GlowScript, which followed the iterative process to update the position at each time interval. First, we update the force, then update the velocity using the velocity update formula, then update the position using the position update formula, and repeat this process for the whole time frame. The first image represents the Newton's second law. The second represents the velocity update formula, and the third represents the position update formula. Here's our procedure that we followed during our lab. First, we recorded the video of an expo marker rolling at constant speed without changing direction. Then, we use the tracker software to analyze the position of the ball frame by frame. This will give us the data for the observed position of the ball. Then, we edit the starter GlowScript code with the data specific to our system's initial position and velocity. Then, we export the observed position data from tracker and the observed position data from the computational model into Excel to create a position versus time graph. Both graphs were then compared and analyzed to answer our question of whether or not our observed motion can model constant velocity. Here's the observed model and tracker. As you can see, this is a video of the expo marker rolling across the table without changing direction. The position and time data is plotted in a table and a graph to the right, which will be later used for data analysis. As you can see, the red points that follow the marker as it moves is the estimated center of mass which tracker uses to observe the motion of the marker. To the right is a starter code for the computational model. The following edits were made to the code to better fit our system's properties. The system's mass was 0.01 kg, the initial position started at 0.000951 meters, the initial velocity was 0.342 meters per second, the total time frame of motion observed was 3.07 seconds. Fnet was 000 because we are observing constant velocity. The initial position and initial velocity was determined from tracker data. Initial position was determined from the first data point, while the initial velocity was calculated from average of 2 data points. Here's the graph that we created using the observed model data and the computational model data. The orange curve represents the motion predicted by the computational model, while the blue curve represents the observed motion. As you can see, over time, the observed motion deviated from the predicted motion. The observed motion underpredicted the final position of the marker. This could be due to the fact that there were external forces like friction and air resistance that led to the marker traveling a smaller distance than expected. Now let's talk about sources of error in this lab. First was human error. Since the data for the observed motion extracted from tracker relied so much on the user's ability to approximate the location of center of mass, it could have introduced error to the results. The surroundings, in this case the table the marker was rolling on, could have introduced forces that hindered our ability to model constant velocity. Finally, the calculations made for the initial conditions of the system could have introduced rounding errors since exact answers were not used in the model. What does it mean? If we were to flip our axes, the slope of our tracker and computational model graphs would have a negative slope instead. Since our marker is currently moving left to right along the positive x-axis, swapping the axis to negative x would turn all of our data negative. However, this would not change our conclusions or comparisons of observed versus predicted. It is not possible to count the number of forces that are acting on the marker as it moves along the table. Thus, it is nearly impossible to model constant velocity since we would have to manipulate forces like friction and air resistance, which we have no control over.